Well, I thought I would start by reading my own lockdown poem, which I think it was a video for Poetry on the Move had a thing called Well-Known Corners. So it was people writing about lockdown, being stuck at home. So my poem about lockdown is called Space. In the early panicked days, our space contracts. Our front doorstep now like a spaceship's airlock. Here, outerwear is pulled on, taken off. As we move into the outer world, back in, we see only each other. No neighbourly chats at the clothesline. Laundry's dried indoors. Even trips to the bin are rationed. Garbage bags pile up. When a neighbour connects us with WhatsApp, our space expands. News and tips are passed from phone to phone, from flat to flat. Then photographs of treats, safely prepared, delivered, if we wish it, to our door. One Sunday night, neighbour after neighbour singly climbs our steep back stairs to place a bowl on the green chair, reverse down the steps and talk and laugh as the bowl is filled with pasta, a glass with wine. Our lone lights have become a constellation of kindness, care, concern. I miss it when the blessed, more ordinary days return. So I'm going to read a couple of poems from She Reconsiders Life on the Run. The first one came about because a friend, I used to work as an editor in-house, and a friend there mentioned one day she'd had a pelvic ultrasound and her doctor had told her that she had no unusual fluids in her pouch of Douglas. And another friend who we worked with said, "What's Douglas doing in there?" And out of that came this poem. So it's called The Pouch of Douglas, and it begins with an epigraph. Although eponyms should be avoided, they are in frequent use and a guide to their meaning is useful. This is from a book called Anatomy by a guy called O'Reilly. A friend who went for a pelvic ultrasound was relieved to hear she had no unusual fluids in her pouch of Douglas. What she didn't know was that the pouch of Douglas is a small pocket in the female body in which reside all the eponyms that physicians have tacked onto this extraordinary anatomy, filed alphabetically. And if you care to look, you'll see Bartholin's glands right next to Frankenhauser's ganglion, which rubs up against the Graafian follicle. The canal of Nook, on the other hand, will be found nestled between Mackenrod's ligament and the tubules of Skene. So where exactly is this pouch of Douglas? It is, in fact, the little space between the back of the uterus and the front of the rectum. Two good solid names that at least a woman can call her own. It's so funny when it's so silent. Okay, so the next one I'm going to read is called She Reconsiders Life on the Run. Sadness always knew where to find me, though I kept on giving it false addresses and moved house when it got too close. It discovered my silent number. Tired of its voice on the answering machine, I disconnected the phone. I took to leaving the lights off so Sadness couldn't tell when I was at home. I didn't put music on. I moved around as little as possible in case it had sonar. I wasn't sure how it was tracking me. It got so that it was hard to go out. I'd be standing in the supermarket choosing a brand of shampoo and Sadness would touch my elbow. I'd realise in the cinema as the lights went down that Sadness had the seat next to me. Eventually I saved up and had my fingerprints removed and my face reconstructed by a plastic surgeon, so Sadness wouldn't recognise me, even if we bumped into each other on the street. The day Sadness saw me and knew me in my new face and hands, I realised it was going to take a heart transplant to shake this thing. The excitement of living like a getaway driver was beginning to pall. I decided to reclaim my face, my actual address. I know that Sadness will choose inconvenient times to visit, arriving as I'm getting dressed to go out, or at 2 a.m, or while I'm watching my favourite show on TV. But it doesn't unpack its suitcase all over my bedroom, or drink all the milk, or run up a 3-figure phone bill calling long distance, or expect to stay for months like an English backpacker. And I don't have to avert my gaze when Sadness catches my eye, or block my ears when it knocks at the door. Now I say, is it you, sadness? Come in, come in. It's been a while. Thanks. So I'm going to read a poem. I'm going to read a couple of the elements poems. So autobiochemistry is named for a long sequence of poems that are mainly autobiographical, but each one is named for and connected to an element of the periodic table. I have a background in chemistry and I'm absolutely nuts for the elements. So this was a really good fun sequence to write. So I'm going to read first. This is actually a poem about tea. Its original title was Manganese, a Paean to Tea, as in a song of praise for tea. But the end bit got knocked out because that wasn't how, once it was in the sequence, it couldn't have that subtitle. Anyway, so this is Manganese. Tea is not high in essential nutrients, except for manganese, a dietary mineral. Chemically speaking, tea is both a solution and a suspension. Some of the compounds it contains dissolved and others suspended within the transparent amber. Tea, the solution, can fix, can right. It flocks to emergencies, hot, sweet tea, a tiny point of comfort in the wilds of grief. Tea, the suspension, can usefully interrupt, postpone, or act as a bridge between the day's compartments. It can span the space between us, from the first, how do you take it, to intimacies shared while the kettle boils. Manganese is added to steel to strengthen it. It also fortifies human bones. Tea can stiffen the spine, strengthen resolve. In fatigue, the stimulants tea contains can be the necessary corrective. Not just caffeine, but theobromine and its isomer, theophylline. The theo here, not from the Greek theos, God, though a well-timed cup of tea can seem like a God gift, but from the Latin thea, tea. Theobromine is one of the feel-goods in chocolate. Theophylline is an asthma drug. The one time I took it, my hands trembled, my heart raced, as if the hounds of hell were after it. The molecule's potency, not contained by tea's kindness. So the other element poem I'm going to read is Tungsten. And actually Tungsten, this is actually one of two poems I'm going to be reading about dreams. I'm really fascinated by dreams. And I should explain for those who don't know that in the old school incandescent bulbs, the filament, the little wire that glows, is made of tungsten. Tungsten. Sudden dusk in the house again. My hand at the light switch. It's always one of those old black Bakelite switches that click so distinctly. Click, the filament fails to blaze, an ominous absence of incandescence. I run from switch to switch. Each click floods a room with nightmare dark. And this one is called Therapist Dreamt. The night after the second session, we walk through spacious dream rooms, talking. In future instalments, you talk about Jung on the sofa at the party. We stand at a fence, looking in at some wild greenery. You call me darling, cook me pikelets. You're pregnant. You speak beautiful French. I'm running late for a session and the toilet is full of socks. Your hair is dark when you're blonde, you're black when you are white. You wear a terrible cloth cap that doesn't suit you, a hat that makes you look like Miss Marple. You have 2 bloodless gashes on your face. My glass of water spills into your fireplace. In the kitchen of my childhood home, I make you tea. You're in our bathroom where the mirror should be. You're a terrier. You lean to nibble the belly of the small furred creature that wriggles luxuriously at your side. You're in the dream with the very, very small plum tree, surprisingly in blossom. We are almost always in the same country, the same room, once in the same bed. where you held me safely as I slept so my body could remember. Another time, we strip. You're going to help me warm the frozen person who gripped my hand and was hauled up from under the sand, under the ocean. This one's called Scar Massage. A tiny section of my body was excised, sent off for biopsy. A day or two later, somebody jokingly asked how I thought my mole was going. I found I could not bear to think of that small piece of me, floating in clear fluid in a plastic bottle in a pathologist's office, irretrievable, irrevocably exiled. I was left with a cavity that has sealed itself over with the help of 2 continuous sutures. Now that the stitches are out and a week has gone by, I massage the scar for 5 minutes twice a day, using, as advised, 2 fingers and as much pressure as I can tolerate to prevent the join hardening. I am astounded by the depth of its colour. Other parts of me have been lost, other scars left to harden. These are not so visible. I've stopped ignoring them nonetheless, have stopped trying to disguise them with complaisance, competence, facts at the ready. I return to them, feel for their shapes under the surface, attest their presence with as much pressure as I can tolerate. I speak to them, tell them that they are no longer alone. And I thought I'd read one of the poems from the sequence called The Change, Some Notes from the Field. And this one is called Perimenopause as a Ticket to KL. You don't need to save up or have shots to reach the steamy latitudes. Just do the washing up. Think about something that pisses you off. Walk quickly up a hill. Drink a glass of red. Bam, you're in Kuala Lumpur, Borneo, Bangkok, suffused with dripping heat. You don't need a plan or a passport, or even to be upright. The tropics will find you in bed. Thank you. And the last couple of poems, I'm going to read a new one. They're from my manuscript in progress. The first one is from a sequence that was commissioned by the Red Room. I was shortlisted for the fellowship this year, and everyone who got shortlisted had a sequence commissioned. So mine was called The Family Line, and I'm going to read a poem from that called Sunday Lunch. Entering her parents' house is like landing on a foreign planet in original Trek. No lizard-headed alien will spring from behind a rock, but the atmosphere is hostile to reality. She can't bring her whole self here. It would be like bringing a baby into a beer hall, all need and feeling, in a place where need and feeling are distractions from the good time to be had, impediments to the easy flow of jokes and facts and comedy quotes, and relentlessly animated conversation. By Tuesday, she's binging and purging again, crying into her coffee, telling her friend she doesn't know what's wrong. Her friend says, "Have you seen your mother lately?" As her wife will say in years to come, noting her fixed, argumentative stance. "Hun, did you talk to your family?" And this is the last one I'm going to read. Got a frog in my throat. I've written before about a phenomenon called dissociation. So dissociation is a fairly common thing for people who've been traumatised, particularly as children. And it means a variety of things, but it can mean things like not feeling real in the world, not feeling like the world is real, not feeling like you're in your body, a lot of separation, distancing. But at the moment, I'm writing a sequence of poems that's about what happens when you are healing from this kind of trauma and you actually start coming back into your body. Like, what is that like? So this sequence is called Landing in My Skin, and the poem I'm going to read you from it is called Balance. Balance holds you upright in a net of tiny, imperceptible adjustments. body taking continuous soundings by eyes, muscles, joints, the inner ear, relayed to the brain in a ceaseless loop of detection, feedback, instruction. I once saw a woman with no sense of balance. She had to work to stay upright, her body in ceaseless motion, ever tilting, toppling and caught, every conscious movement requiring a conscious counterbalance. I have never since taken it for granted, and sometimes feel a toddler's delight in balance, the firmness of its orientation, freeing you to move in any direction. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tricia. We've had a lot of conversation happening in the chat, so I hope you go through and pick it up, because although, in terms of audio, you haven't heard us expostulating and commenting and relating and all the things that we've been doing, Tricia, it has been happening. So
I look forward to that.
Yeah, so thank you so much. They were really wonderful poems, and I was interested in that idea of the healing, or the way in which you use that metaphor of the body. I've played around with that idea of sort of the epithelial cells that sort of cover a wound, and it's not about conscious intent, but it's about a different kind of incremental healing, I suppose. Yeah, so really, really interesting ideas. Anyway, thank you so much. That was really, really wonderful.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm sure we all, yes, there are virtual and real claps and, reactions, etc., all the things we can do on Zoom, we are doing them.